Hari Om. Human quest for perfection. This is always a relevant topic. And there is also a very deep rooted drive in every human being. What is that deep rooted drive? To seek perfection in life. Correct. And if we see ourselves, we always desire for self improvement and fulfillment in life on a daily basis, right? Is there any difference in this view? We all aim for self improvement day by day, right? And also fulfillment, how to be more happy, how to be, envision an ideal or a revised version of ourselves. This is very much that we are doing on a daily basis. And if you see the perfection, when I say perfection, so there is basically a drive that is happening from our inward realm, right? The aspiration basically comes from where? Is that aspiration coming from outside? Is somebody saying that you have to become perfect, you have to improve daily? Who is telling? Is this aspiration coming from outside? Is this aspiration coming from outside? No. It is coming from within. And if you see the capability that we all have to imagine or idealize or pushing ourselves for creating unique capabilities. Correct. So basically the call comes from within. Call for what? Call for perfection. And when I say call for perfection comes from within, and where this perfection should happen, is this perfection should happen at the plane of body, or at the plane of mind, or at the plane of intellect, or at the plane of moral values? We'll park this question. So we will see this. And when it comes to psychology, they call the term perfection. And as per psychology, the term perfection can be interpreted as striving for flawlessness. And what happens is basically when we strive for flawlessness, it is also quite possible, it is not quite possible, it is always be the situation that when this striving happens for flawlessness, the anxiety will also come, right? What is that anxiety? Anxiety is all about whether I will fall short. Any flaws will come. So that is where the anxiety will also come. So then that anxiety coming will create further stress. Correct. So when it comes to the philosophical theories, philosophy says this perfection is that sort of a good life. In that scenario, the human nature will be developed to the fullest. Developed to the fullest in the form of physical, mental, moral, or even artistically. This is what philosophical theory says. And from a psychology point of view, it is a state of flawlessness. From a philosophy point of view, it says about the perfection in different realms. Right? So there are different schools when it comes to the perfection. Different schools debates on different things. But what constitutes optimal human capabilities? When I ask this question, what constitutes the optimal human capabilities? My question is basically, what is the absolute perfection? And where is this absolute perfection? Is it in the physical? Is it in the mental? Is it in the intellectual? Where is this absolute perfection possible? And if you depend upon physical, if you depend upon the world, if you depend upon our mental, intellectual, emotional things, right? This perfection, this absolute perfection is unattainable. Or if you take health, optimal health, what is that optimal health? How will we reach that optimal health? Is there a perfection possible? Or similar to, say, intellectual perfection? Is there an optimal intellectual perfection? You may study, you may do research, you may get 10 PhDs, but will we be able to reach that perfection at the intellectual plane, or at the plane of health, at the plane of a body? So our discussion point is basically the human quest for perfection. And what we do, we all do the perfection or the search of perfection or the quest for perfection. What we are doing, we are beginning our journey in the world, begin our search in the world, begin our journey from the outside. Correct? And outer achievements, it is also clear that cannot fully satisfy us. So outer achievements cannot bring perfectionism. So now, if that is the state, the so-called concept of flawlessness, perfectionism, etc., where it is possible? So that is where the Vedanta comes here as an agent of transition. Is there a higher kind of perfection possible in our lives? So as per Vedanta, the human quest for perfection is all about not depending upon the external achievements. It is all about discovering and manifesting the divine essence within oneself. It's all about the inward journey. And in that journey, one will reach the state of perfection, purity, and touches the core, so called as the absolute reality. In Vedantic term, the Brahman, Atman. So that perfection we are looking cannot be from the external achievements, because these external achievements are having limitations. This is very logical. So this perfection is all about discovering and manifesting the divine essence within oneself. This is all perfection that we are talking, whether philosophy or psychology talks. Vedanta talks only one perfection, that is the inner perfection. The inner perfection is all about knowing the true self. And that self is what? Self is the embodiment of perfection. That self is the embodiment of unchanging reality. It is the embodiment of everything. And that perfection can be achieved through how? Through self-inquiry and practices. Atma Vijaram. And Swadhyaya and different practices. In another way, we can say perfection is also a liberation. What is this liberation we are talking about? Who should get liberation? Is that self or is that mind? The mind has to get the liberation. The mind has to get liberation from where? From the illusion of the ego. So when the mind gets liberated from the illusion of ego, that is also the state of perfection. What is happening when the mind gets liberation from the illusion of ego? That state itself is called as the no mind state, where the mind won't act, mind won't create the superficial personalities. So that is the state of a perfection. Liberation from the illusion of ego is the state of perfection. Also, the mastery over the body, mind, ego. Mastery over the body, mind, ego. Because when I say mastery, these planes, for example, body, mind, ego, intellect, everything, you all admit that there are limitations in these planes. So when one transcends these planes, meaning the mastery over body, mind, intellect, senses, the limitations of these planes, and recognize the truth within, one's unity with that truth, that is the mastery. So here the Vedantic declaration is complete perfection lies in realizing yourself. That is the perfection. And do you think that that perfection has to be attained? You are already that perfection. But the problem is basically we all are lost. We all are lost in these planes, the body, mind, intellect, sense, ego. So the way is basically what? Transcend the limitations of these planes and recognize your true identity. So that is where the complete perfection lies. Knowing your own capability, knowing your own true nature, which is beyond all imperfections. And that state, that Nijasthiti, is the state of fulfillment, is the state of liberation, is the state of wholesomeness. Or if you see the material or eternal perfection, let us take some of those examples. Health, wealth, beauty, success, achievements, degrees, the possessions. If you see all those material or external perfections, can one guarantee that these will remain forever? Can anybody here can guarantee that these material or external objects we can achieve perfection? It is not possible. And if you think from a psychological perfection point of view, let us take the example of our emotions, of balancing our emotion always, right? Or we ourselves having resilience, or consistent and constant mental strength. Is possible? That is also not possible. So now the point is basically the perfection that we are seeking is already within. That is what Vedanta says, that is called as a spiritual perfection. And here the good part is that we don't really need to strive for that perfection, because that perfection is not becoming something here. That perfection is not something that you need to achieve or target or aim or get it. Here the perfection is all about realizing that we already are. And if you see the Western perspectives, be it Aristotle, right? There also perfection is defined as striving towards excellence. And if you see the modern psychology, Abraham Maslow's self-actualization theory, where evolved from the lower planes to the physiological safety, security, esteem, self-actualization. And if you see these perspectives, all these perspectives will fail if we depend upon external things for bringing perfection in us. Because if we chase those external things for perfection, what will happen? Ultimately, it will lead to frustration. It will lead to anxiety, it will lead to stress. Where perfection is defined as basically what? Flawlessness. So, the true quest for perfection must get shifted from the outside to the inner. And a person who is inwardly perfect creates the right aura, creates or radiates the peace, radiates the compassion, brings the clarity. Not only that, that person will influence the society in a positive manner. So my point is basically, outside, if you depend upon outside and look at perfection, we will never get any perfection. We will see only imperfection. And the result of that imperfection that we are seeking from outside is restlessness. That is it. So here, the Vedantic journey is restlessness to realization. Restlessness to realization. Why I am saying restlessness? Because we start our journey from outside, we think that perfection is outside. So the outcome is basically restlessness. So the journey is from outside to inner, restlessness to realization. And here in the Vedanta or literatures use different terms for such an inwardly perfected person. The names are like Yogastan, Sthithaprajnan, Brahmajnani, Jivan Muktan, Mukta Purushan, different. So what is this inward perfection or the traits or capabilities of a person who is inwardly perfect? Such a person has got resilience, such a person has got emotional stability, such a person has got perfect mental health. This is very important because these days mental health is a very big topic. So that person will also have a holistic vision. That person will also have an inclusiveness in life. That person will also see unity in diversity. That person will also be free from stress. Above all, that person will live fully without attaching to things. So the quest for perfection. In another way, we can say that we look for Dukkha Nivritti and Paramananda Prapti. And Bhagavan in Bhagavad Gita says that is what we are going to do. We are going to cover that sloka. So here Arjuna is now going to ask, what is the mark of that perfect person you are talking about? Right? The one who is really having mental equanimity, the one who is having a holistic vision, the one who is having resilience in life, one who is having emotional stability, the one who is able to see a holistic view, one who is unattached to the things in life, one who is freedom from stress. So now Arjuna is going to ask, hey Bhagavan, please let me know what is the mark of such a person. So here Bhagavan says that the quality or traits of such a person is whose realization is steady, who is not shakeable, and who is ever in samadhi, who is ever in equanimity of the mind. So such a person will be, the realized one. So that is what Arjuna is asking. Can I see what are their traits? How will I identify? What is the mark of such a person? Right? You may wonder what is this question about. So schools follow uniform. Why they follow the uniform? Tell me, what is the reason for schools having uniform? Uniqueness. So you can identify, right? If somebody else is there, it cannot be, right? That is where the uniform is also very unique, and if everybody wears that, every student wears, right, it is easy to identify. So how can I find such a realized soul? What sort of what is the right word? Maybe you when you or when someone is invited to your home, you give the address. These days it is easy because Google Map, if you share the location, Google Map will let that person to land at your place. But otherwise, in the olden times, we give the address and some landmark, correct, near to that school, near to that post office, opposite to this pharmacy, etc. Similarly, Arjuna is asking, what is the mark of a Sthithaprajna? Right. So, Arjuna uvacha Sthithaprajnasya ka bhasha samadhistasya keshava sthidadi kim prabhasheta kimasida vrajeta kim. Sthithaprajnasya ka bhasha samadhistasya keshava sthidadhi kim prabhasheta kim asida vrajate kim. How does a truly wise and spiritually realized person live in this world? Right? How he would speak, how he would sit, how he would walk, etc. This is what the Sloka says. At a high level, we can understand that the question that Arjuna is asking to Bhagavan Krishna is, how does a truly wise and spiritually realized person live in this world? What is the mark of a Sthithaprajna? So, can this person be identified? Can he or she be identified by the outer behavior? That is where, what would this person speak? Right? What would be the, when you say walk and sit and etc., how this person can be identified by the outer behavior through speech or actions, or is it something through the inner state, such as equanimity, detachment, fearlessness? How this person can be identified, hey Bhagavan? Sthithaprajna. Sthita meaning established. Prajna meaning wisdom or intellect. So Sthithaprajna meaning one whose wisdom is very well established. What is this establishment? The establishment is basically the wisdom is centered in the self-knowledge. So here, samadhi, samadhistasya keshava, sthida dhi kim prabhasheda. So here, the most important part is, here Bhagavad Gita is now bringing the term samadhi. Samadhi meaning what? What is the real meaning of samadhi? Samadhi is real nature. So one whose wisdom is established, one who is centered in the self-knowledge is with the real nature or is in samadhi. So here, what is the mark by which I can recognize that person who is illumined, who is a realized soul? So here, why this question Arjuna is asking? It's basically, I will not say that Arjuna might have had this. We all have a common misconception in life. When you say a person who is realized or who is a spiritual person, see, the vague understanding is that such person will be totally out of the society, who will be doing meditation, who will be, staying alone or away from family, or something different than normal people will do, or appear extraordinary like big gurus. This is a common misconception in the society. That is why Arjuna is asking this question. So how will I realize how such a person is earmarked? What is the, how one will be able to identify? So this stems from the misconception that they are a different league of people. So Bhagavan will answer this question, but before that, there is a, the fundamental issue is basically human beings are always wheeled by ignorance. That knowledge which is already there within all of us is hidden or covered by ignorance. That is why human beings get deluded. In Gita, Ajnanena avridam jnanam tena muhyanti janda. So the jantu meaning these beings are deluded about what? Deluded about their true nature. They drift from the right understanding of the true nature and they position themselves in the external world. And as a result of that, they suffer from sorrows, delusions, fear, shogam, moham, bhayam, etc. So, according to Bhagavad Gita, this delusion is that we have to remove. So when the mind is always running into the world of objects, it is quite common that the mind's acquaintance is with the external world, external objects. And as I mentioned before, the perfection that we are seeking from the external world, only frustrations will come. So instead of that, turn inward and you know your true nature, when mind has that sort of a company, what happens is basically mind will start going inward, and there will come a state called as mind not thinking about the delusions. So what will happen ultimately, the mind will reach a state that it will force to be in that own self. It means consciousness becomes, when I say consciousness, this mind becomes conscious of itself. In the Nirvana Shatkam, Bhagavad Padar says, Mano buddhi ahankara chitta ninaham nacha shrotra jihve nacha krana netre nacha vyoma bhumir na tejo na vayu chidananda rupa shivoham shivo. So here, when you start deep introspection, you will come to know that I am not this mind, I am not the body, I am not the intellect, I am not these senses, I am not the ego. I am not this pancha karmendriyam, jnanendriyam. I am not these five elements, akasham, jalam, vayu, agni, prithvi. So the mind will now understand that who am I? Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivo. This is the knowledge that mind needs for the liberation. And this knowledge is not new. This is already there. That is our heritage. Already our heritage. So what you need to do is strive for it. When I say strive, that is also not a right word. You realize that. You recognize it. And when we know, when we recognize, you just claim it. So that is where you start experiencing the true joy. And the real fulfillment, the real transformation should happen where? In our inner realm. So now Bhagavan says that, going to define who is Sthithaprajna, how you can identify Sthithaprajna, etc. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Prajahadi yada kaman sarvan partha manogadan atmanyevatmana tushta Sthithaprajnastadauchyade. Prajahadi yada kaman sarvan partha manogadan Atmani eva atmana tushta Sthithaprajna tada uchyade. The one who has renounced all desires of the mind and is ever content only in the self, by the self, he is said to be a Sthithaprajna. Meaning, a person of ascertained knowledge, a sage of steady realization. In another way, the one who is always aware of his or her own true nature, he is a Sthithaprajna. A knower who also, right, we can say that initially, when I discussed before, seeking this perfection in the outside. So this knower also formerly traveled through different sufferings due to the trait of mind, due to the tendencies of the mind, such as association, bondage, etc. So that person ultimately gains knowledge through how? Through dispassion and through wisdom, ultimately give up those associations, bondages, etc. that mind has gathered. So that person has already realized that I am not the mind, I am not even the mind. Meaning what? The mind alone cannot exist. There is no separate existence for the mind apart from the self. So that person has realized that it is the play of ignorance that is keeping the mind to attach with the external things. It doesn't mean that we should stop using the mind. You need to use the mind, but keep the mind away from gathering the ignorance. Otherwise, what happens is basically if we allow the mind to operate only in the external world, mind will create the feeling that I am separate, I am that self. So that ignorance will always be relevant. That play of ignorance that happens in this mind will create delusion and create the problems in this world. So the Sthithaprajna is a person who is always joyful. Joy comes from the inner nature. Atmanyeva atmana tushta. Inherently this person is joyful. Joy comes from where? From its inner nature, that self. That person will find bliss in himself or herself. And what is the reason? That self is the reason. That self is the embodiment of happiness. Self is the embodiment of perfection. So if you are that self, then what is the point in looking perfection outside? Let me ask a question. Do you see gender in the happiness when you sleep, female or male? Is there any gender coming in that happiness during our sleep? And that happiness is our true nature, because the sleeping state, the deep sleep state, says that I am enjoying, I am in perfection. And that is our true nature, but we are not knowing. And that state is our name also. That is the state of fullness, that is the state of perfection. And in that state, please be mindful that what we are doing, we are renouncing everything in that state, correct? We are renouncing, we are not carrying anything while you are sleeping. Are you carrying the identity of the body? Are you carrying the identity of the mind? Are you carrying the identity of your possessions? Are you remembering the Aadhaar card number, etc. during the sleep? That is the state of fullness, that is the state of perfection. And is there anybody here who is saying that daily I am sleeping, I am getting bored, I mean it's monotonous sleeping? Everything we are renouncing, including your body, mind, intellect, sense, ego, etc. What is there? Just easiness is there, just that beingness is there, that that is only existing at that point of time. That mere existence, that is the Atma, that is the self. And that state we have to achieve. Sthithaprajna is whom Atmani eva Atmana tushta. In that self, that consciousness which is shining forth within us as I am. And that is the only real thing. If that clarity comes in our mind, then the mind will automatically come out of the Maya. That mind will automatically come out of this virtuous or virtual cycle. So now the question is, here Bhagavan says, Prajahati yada kaman. When the desires are given up, sarvan partha manogadan, as they appear in the mind, the one who is a Sthithaprajna will see the happiness within. Atmani eva atmana tushta Sthithaprajna tada uchyate. So here, giving up of the desires. One who has overcome all the desires. That is the right understanding we should have. One who has overcome all the desires in the mind. So now the question will come, oh, I should be hopeless in life. Is this a suppression? No. So when the petty desires are getting reduced, the petty desires are getting reduced in front of our true, infinite, ever-free nature called as the self. In front of that self, with that self-knowledge, with that deep-rooted knowledge, the petty desires are having a lower precedence. Otherwise, there is nothing equal in value when I compare my own true self. That real self-respect. Nothing can be equated. Nothing is equal in value with my own true self, which is infinite, which is the embodiment of everything. So this is the maturity that mind has to gain. So now in motion, when I say motion, mind is completely operating in the outside plane. What happens is basically it is called as the movement of mind, called as the chanchala avastha or chanjalya. So when with this knowledge, nothing can be equal in value with my own true self, where I am not the real mind, movement of mind will come down, then the desires will also come down. It doesn't mean that you will not operate in this world without any desires. The mind will always stay at the core rather than with those impulses. Yeah, I need to buy that, I need to get, others are having, I need to consistently strive for that, and also this kind of, the movement or flickering of the mind will not happen. So when one is fully delighted in the self, the desiring urges will come down. And again, the desiring urges will come down, meaning these, there will not be any dragging of the mind by the desirable objects outside. Let me ask a simple question. Are these objects outside are creating the trigger, or the mind is creating the trigger? For example, you daily drink tea, and if you don't drink tea on one fine day, you will have difficulties. Is this tea telling that you did not consume me, you have to consume? So the dragging is not happening through the objects outside, but the desires that are created in the mind. So here, when we say Bhagavan is addressing that yada kaman sarvan partha manogada, it is not through the effort, but by an effortless, spontaneous process called as the self-knowledge. When one has that knowledge about the self, then the renunciation is happening. What is that renunciation? I am greater than the possessions. This is basically a mental renunciation. I am greater, my value is greater than all the other possessions. So the drift is going to happen. Now what I have is important. No, So instead of what I have, what I am. Instead of what? Instead of what I have, now the U-turn is happening. What I am. What truly am I? Who am I? So mind withdrawn from the objects will automatically identify with the subject, with the truth. So in Sudhi says, Bandhaya Vishaya Sango Muktaye Nirvishayam Mana. Bandhaya Vishaya Sango. Mukti is what? Mukti is basically Nirvishayam. Manas is not thinking too much about the Vishayam, too much about the objects. Mind withdrawn from the objects will automatically identify with the subject. So who is a Sthithaprajna? Sthithaprajna is the one who prepares his or her mind for the knowledge of higher reality. Desires rise, no problem. But gives up. Also, no imprints of desires are kept in the mind. If desire is coming, okay, I have to buy something, you buy and then that is it. And you give up. Also, without any external incentives or circumstances, without depending upon the external conditions, if that desire is coming, you fulfill it. So this is the wisdom. That is the wisdom which will bring difference. Prajahadi yada kaman, renunciation of all mental cravings. It is not a suppression, but it is a transcendence through the higher knowledge. Atmani eva atmana tushta. Content in the self, by the self. Why? Because the true joy comes from within, not from the external possessions. And when Bhagavan says the Sthithaprajna is the one who has no desires, right? So the question will come, oh, how one will live without desires? Especially the modern marketeers will get worried. Okay, if nobody is having desires, how will they sell the product? Modern marketeer will get restless. If no desires, how will I, or how will I sell? And we all know that people who wants to buy, they will buy. It is not about stopping buying, right? It is not about stop buying. Clever users will buy, but they will buy what they really want, and they will stop there. They will not, endlessly scroll one after another and another after another and after another. They will buy whatever they need. So don't get worried. Like, it is not something like no desire and be grumpy in life. No. Sthithaprajna, the one who is well established. Sthitha, well established. In what? Prajna. In what? In that knowledge, which is born out of what? That knowledge is born out of what? That knowledge is really born out of the discriminative intelligence, the clear clarity between Atma, Anatma, Vastu, Vivekam, or the Nitya, Anitya, Vastu, Vivekam. So now, how this Sthithaprajna will do the endeavors in life? That is what Arjuna asked. How this person will talk, will sit, will walk, etc. So what is the answer? The answer is what? This Sthithaprajna, that person, when Arjuna asked how that person will sit, Bhagavan's answer is that person doesn't sit on desires. Doesn't sit on the desires always. And because desires are for what? Desires are for bringing happiness. So that person won't sit on desires to bring happiness, because there is an unlimited stock of happiness within. This is the vibrant contentment. This is the real energy in such people. So such people will be free from ups and downs and desires of gains, or worrying about loss, or worrying about criticisms, etc. They have a real vibrant content or contentment within, the energy within. Verse number 56. दुःखेष्वनुदिग्नमना सुखेषु विगतस्पृहा वीतरागभयक्रोधा स्थितधीर्मुनिरुच्यते. दुःखेषु अनुदिग्नमना सुखेषु विगतस्पृहा वीतरागभयक्रोधः स्थितधीः muni uchyate. So whose mind is not affected or unshaken in what? Sukheshu vigadaspraha vida raga bhaya krodha dukkha. So dukkeshu, whose mind is unshaken in sorrow, fear, alright, or free from longing in pleasures, and who has gone beyond what? All this attachment, fear, anger. Such a person is here referred as Muni, a wise person or a sage. And such a person is the Sthithaprajna. Such a person is called as the man of steady wisdom. Dukkheshu anudignamana. Unshaken. It doesn't mean that that person is a rock. Pain may come, feels pain in some, not in such adverse situations, but doesn't collapse. But doesn't collapse with the depression and other problems. Will bounce back. That is what unshaken. So may feel a pain if some adverse situations come, but it doesn't. That person will not collapse. That person will not go into deep depression. Sukheshu vigadaspraha. Again, enjoys without clinging or demanding repetition. I got one, again and again and again. No such cravings. No such demanding repetition. Enjoys thing without clinging. Vida raga bhaya krodha. Beyond the attachments of fear, anger. So here attachment meaning ragam. Ragam binds to expectation. Fear, bhayam, arises when we cling to things. Anger, krodham, comes when desires are not fulfilled or blocked. So when our mind is freed from these, when the mind is freed, then the mind is at the state of steadiness. So whose mind is not affected by adversities, free from attachment, fear, anger, such a person is Muni, whose knowledge stays unshaken. Such a person is a thoughtful person. Such a person is called as a great thinker or Muni. Such a person will explore things outside with the seamless string of energy coming from the inner. With a purified mind, such a person, Muni, will explore things outside with the seamless string of energy coming from within. So such a person's mark is equanimity. Such a person's equanimity marks the wisdom. This Muni, this sage, or we can say sage of wisdom, that person has gone beyond the grip of emotional extremes. No extremes, always balanced. the central path. So such a person will cultivate lasting inner stability. How that stability comes? When that person understands the eternal nature, the true identity. Mananad Muni, one whose mind is ever in the mananam, ever in the contemplation. So Muni, there is also a meaning Maunam. It comes from the term Maunam, who is silent. It doesn't mean that the physical silence. Here the silence is basically what? The one, what is that silence here? The one who has realized the true self. That true self is silence. That true self is not agitated. That true self is the inner state of peace, untouched, undisturbed, unperturbed. So such a person is called as Muni, the wise person, who has got knowledge. Sthitha in Srimad Bhagavata, if you all know the story of Sudhama, the Kuchela Brahman. So Kuchela or the Sudhama lived a life of extreme poverty, but always in a peaceful state. Though such miserable conditions existed in his life, and who is a Brahmajnani, Brahmavittama. And later Sudama meets Bhagavan Krishna, and Bhagavan Krishna made Kujala Brahmanan a very prosperous. That is basically the transformation, right? Transformation from poverty to abundance happened in Sudama's life. But there also, in that prosperous situation also, Sudama remained perfectly poised, very indifferent in life. Bhagavata says that Bhagavan's Maya failed to win over the Kuchera Brahman. Because these both situations happened, right? Poverty to abundance. But he remained perfectly poised, very indifferent. So a sage, a Muni, is the one who abides in the self, not in the mind. If you abide, if you live in the mind, then these stability issues will come. So, overcoming the fear, attachment, sorrow, etc. is a mark of a Muni, is a mark of knower of Brahman, who is a wise person, abides in the self, abides in the true self, not in the body, mind, intellect, sense, ego. No delusion. There is no room for any misery. Steadily abiding in one's own real nature. Sthitadhi. Sthitadhi. So, perfection is all about moving from restlessness to realization and understanding thoroughly that the external achievements cannot bring perfection. External achievements will only bring restlessness. Only the inner fulfillment will give the realization. This is a very great message that Bhagavan is giving to us through Arjuna. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.